Now that we have Node installed on our system and we're ready to actually start developing JavaScript applications using Node, in this video we're going to go ahead and create our first Node application. And we're going to do it in two different ways. We're going to try the interactive Node console that allows us to write JavaScript on the fly and see it executed in the Node environment. And then we're going to do it through the more common method of creating a JavaScript file and passing that file into Node and having Node execute that file by itself without being in any kind of an interactive mode. To do that, we're going to go ahead and open up a terminal on our computer. We're going to go ahead and verify that we've got Node running on our computer. Go ahead and increase our console text size so that we can all see what's being executed here. So let's do node -v, and we are currently running version 12.8.1 on this computer. So that's a recent version of Node. It might not be the latest and greatest, but it is a recent version. We should be able to execute JavaScript just fine with that version. So let's go ahead and let's execute Node live in our terminal. To do that, we simply call Node, so the utility Node that's built into our computer now that it's been installed. And we see the message, welcome to Node.js 12.8.1. And now we are in an active terminal where we can actually execute Node code directly inside of Node. And we know that it's a terminal because it looks different than our regular command prompt in that we just have this single less than greater than sign. So here we're going to go ahead and execute some JavaScript. We're going to start out with a simple string, and we're going to follow a pretty common first application that they do in a lot of different languages, and that's hello world. But we're going to do hello Bob. We're saying hello to Bob. And this is a simple piece of JavaScript. It's a single statement. It is a string because we have characters wrapped inside of double quotes. That makes it a string. And then the semicolon at the end, of course, makes it terminating that statement. So that's the line termination or statement termination symbol. We hit enter. And what we see here is that the actual JavaScript that we've entered in at the command prompt is being pushed into Node. Node is then translating that code into what it needs in order to talk to the operating system and get that value passed up to the terminal and have it actually printed to the terminal as a string in the terminal. So this is actual terminal output based on this statement being executed in the live Node environment. We can get a little more complex by creating a variable using let and then the variable say something. And we can assign to it the same string, or a similar string, hello Bob, with a semicolon. Of course, if we understand JavaScript, let says let's create a variable. Here's the variable name. It makes a container that we're going to stuff something in. We've got ourselves the assignment operator that says take what's on the right-hand side of the assignment operator and stuff it into the container on the left. So the value, this string, is now stored inside of this variable say something. When we hit enter, instead of having print out to the terminal, we actually get undefined. And undefined is returned because anytime a JavaScript statement executes, if that statement doesn't return a value, JavaScript returns undefined by default for you. So we get an undefined. But we can go ahead and call the say something variable by itself, hit enter, and we get similar output to what we got when we just had the string itself. In other words, this variable is being pushed into Node. Node is examining it. It sees that it's a variable and holds a value in it. And it also automatically understands that when we're inside of this virtual output environment, that it's going to take the string that lives inside that variable and it's going to print it out to our terminal. And then we get our printout right there. So this is the live interactive mode that Node provides us. It's not the common way we'll be executing JavaScript. In fact, the only time you use this is when you are trying to test how something executes in JavaScript live. And to be honest, I rarely use it. I rarely use this feature. But this is a good way to see JavaScript executing in the Node environment live within your terminal. So to get out of that, we go ahead and do Control-C twice. And Control-C twice will take us out of the Node interactive console and puts us back to our regular terminal. Now that we're in our regular terminal, let's go ahead and identify where we're at. So we are currently in my user profile. We're at the root of my user profile. And to do this next step where we're actually going to write a JavaScript file and execute that file with Node, let's go ahead and let's move into our documents folder. So we just go ahead and cd documents, hit enter, and now we should be in our documents folder. So let's go ahead and clear the terminal so we've got a nice clean terminal. And you can tell we are in documents right here because it says that's the location we are at in our terminal right now. And if we do an ls, we should see everything that's inside of our documents folder. To show how that works, if we open up Finder and we go to our documents folder, where is my documents folder? Looks like I got rid of my documents folder, but if we go to Tim and then we go to documents right here, we should see the same things. We've got the Adobe folder, we've got the development folder, and we've got Visual Studio, as well as some hidden files like the recycle bin and then the desktop.ini that we can't see inside of Finder. Really, we're just traversing through the folder structure in the terminal, whereas just as we do when we're using Finder, it's just Finder is a graphical way to go through our folders, and terminal allows us to do it in a text-based method. All right, so we're at our documents folder right here, and what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a JavaScript file for us, and we're just going to use the touch command. So touch just looks to see if there's a file there. If it isn't there, then it creates it, and we provide the file name we want. So we're just going to call it myfirstapp.js. Now, you're most likely used to seeing something, file extensions like .txt or docx or HTML. But JS is the file extension for JavaScript. So if we go ahead and hit enter on that, we see that that file gets created for us inside of Finder. So we can right click on this file and we can go ahead and open it up with a text editor to allow us to modify the contents of that file. Now, if you don't have a good text editor installed, a good one is Atom or Sublime Text. For just simple text editing, I like Sublime Text. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Sublime Text right here. And it opens up my file, this myfirstapp.js. I'm going to go ahead and do the exact same JavaScript that we did when we were in the interactive console for Node inside of our terminal. And we started out with just a hello Bob on a single line as a statement. And then we added a variable that held that value. So say something equals, and then we did hello Bob. And then right after that, we simply called the variable. And if we recall, when this executed in the live interactive mode, we actually saw a printout like this, hello Bob. And then after this one, we saw a printout that said, hello Bob. Now, one thing we need to realize is that when we are executing a JavaScript file with Node rather than being in the interactive mode, we actually will not see either of these being printed out because these statements are simply going to be executed within the Node environment. And if we don't tell it to print something to the terminal, then we won't see it. And we're going to go ahead and demonstrate that right now. So make sure you save the file that you just edited. And then inside of our terminal, if we do ls, we should see our JavaScript file right there. Now, to execute a JavaScript file, we just do the same thing as we did before with Node, but then we pass it the name of the file we would like Node to execute. Now, instead of it running that file interactively within our terminal, Node will simply open up a new environment. It will execute the code within that file, and then it will stop. And so here we can see we didn't get any errors. Node executed the file, and then it finished executing, and then it went right back to our command prompt. No errors, but the file did execute. If we want to prove to ourselves that that file executed, we can come in here and we can add some new code to our code file that will tell Node that when we execute this file, please spit out some information to the terminal so that we can see it execute. And we can do that by simply using what's called a console.log. You may have used this when you did JavaScript in the browser. So console.log, and now we will see this output right here inside of our terminal. And then we can do the exact same thing down here, and we will just wrap this in a console.log. And the console.log, just like it is in the browser, it just provides a way for us to tell the script to export some information out to the currently running I/O inside of our terminal, and then it will print this information back. So go ahead and save that file. Go ahead and execute the code, and we see hello Bob, just like we did, and we see hello Bob. The only difference is, of course, that we don't see our source code. We don't see this actual code as we did in our interactive console, because in the interactive console, we were writing code line by line from scratch, and every time we close that console and reopen it, that code disappears. Whereas using a file, this code is now permanent. It's always in that file. So when we execute that file, we can have it execute that code over and over again. And that's, of course, how we start to begin to build JavaScript applications using JavaScript files.